Sometimes in life, everything seems complicated. We chase dozens of strategies, read shelves of books, attend seminar after seminar, and yet nothing seems to shift. That's because we're missing something simple. We're missing one rule, one principle that, once applied, redefines how we show up in every area of life. Let me tell you what it is. Take full responsibility, not partial, not when it's convenient, not when someone else is watching. Full responsibility. This one rule shifts everything. Now, I know it doesn't sound fancy. It's not new technology or a secret formula, but it works. It always has. And the best part, it's completely within your control. When you take full responsibility, you stop waiting for someone else to change. You stop blaming the weather, the government, your boss, or your upbringing. You look in the mirror and you say, "What if it's to be? It's up to me." That moment is the beginning of real power. Think about it. You can't control the economy. You can't control what your neighbor does, but you can control your reaction. You can control your effort. You can control your attitude. And those things, your reaction, your effort, your attitude, are the levers that move everything else. I once met a man who kept saying, "If only my company promoted me." But I asked him, "Have you been showing up like a leader before they made you one?" He paused. Then he got it. He started treating his current job like it was the one he wanted. 3 months later, promotion. Why? Because he followed the rule, full responsibility. See, it's not about waiting until conditions are perfect. It's about choosing to become someone better under imperfect conditions. Responsibility doesn't just change outcomes, it changes identity. You begin to feel different about yourself. You don't feel like a victim anymore. You feel like a builder, a creator, someone who can shape their life instead of being shaped by it. And here's what's amazing. When you take responsibility, people notice. Opportunities begin to appear. Not because the world suddenly became fairer, but because you became stronger. You're now someone people can count on, someone who can lead, someone who doesn't need to be pushed, they pull. So let me ask you, where in your life have you handed away your power by refusing to take full responsibility? Where are you still waiting, blaming, excusing? Draw a line today. Decide that this is the turning point. You don't need 100 new rules. You need one. And if you live by it, everything else begins to shift. Take full responsibility, not just for what happens, but for how you respond. This is where everything begins. The turning point in anyone's life is the moment they stop pointing the finger and start taking ownership. Not just of the outcomes they like, but of everything. The good, the bad, the mess, the miracle, all of it. You see, it's easy to take credit when things go well. When the paycheck arrives, the business succeeds, the applause comes, it's tempting to say, "See, I did that." But what about the setbacks, the missed opportunities, the arguments, the wasted time, the moments of procrastination? Do you own those too? Here's the truth. Until you do, you're giving your power away. You're placing the pen of your life story in someone else's hands. You're saying, "I'll grow when they're nicer. I'll act when the weather's better. I'll succeed when the boss recognizes me." But life doesn't work that way. Life rewards the person who says, "And I'll show up anyway. I'll take the wheel. I'll write this next chapter myself." And the real shift comes when you stop just owning what happened and start owning how you respond to its end. That's the difference between reaction and responsibility. Anyone can react, most do. But responsibility means you choose your response, even when the situation seems unfair, even when you're tired, hurt, misunderstood, or left out. Let me tell you something worth remembering. No one escapes difficulty. Everyone gets knocked down. Everyone faces betrayal, loss, delays, and disappointments. The difference between the ones who stay stuck and the ones who rise isn't luck. It's ownership. It's how they respond. A man loses his job. One says, "That company never appreciated me," and he slips into bitterness. Another says, "What can I learn from this? What skills do I need? How can I grow from here?" Same event, different response. And in that difference lies two entirely different futures. You may not have chosen what happened to you, but you absolutely choose what happens next. That's the power of response. That's the moment you move from victim to victor. Not because the pain wasn't real, but because you refuse to be defined by it. Now, responsibility doesn't mean blame. That's a trap. Taking responsibility doesn't mean everything's your fault. It just means everything's your move. It's your next step that matters. Your attitude, your energy, your effort, that's what you own. I once heard a story of a young woman who grew up in poverty, faced abuse, and barely made it through school. But one day she looked in the mirror and said, "I'm not in charge of how I got here, but I am in charge of where I go from here." She started reading, working late, waking up early, saying no to distractions. 10 years later, she was mentoring others, living proof that when you take ownership, everything changes. You can do the same. You don't need a better past. You just need a stronger decision in the present. Responsibility is not a burden. It's a gift. It gives you back your power. It tells you you're not stuck. You're steering. You don't have to wait to feel like it. You don't have to be motivated. You just have to decide. Decide that no matter what comes, you will show up with intention, with courage, with clarity. Not because life is easy, but because you are responsible for how you face it. So the next time something doesn't go as planned, pause. Don't look around. Don't point fingers. Ask, what can I do? What's within my control? How can I respond better next time? That's the voice of maturity. That's the sound of growth. That's when life begins to turn. Take full responsibility, not just for what happens, but for how you respond. That's the one rule that changes the game. It might not be flashy. It might not get applause, but it will quietly build a future you can be proud of, day by day, choice by choice, step by step. And one day you'll look back and realize you didn't just change your life, you built it because you took responsibility and you never gave it back. Stop blaming outside forces. The power to change begins with you. Blame is easy. It's the path of least resistance. When something doesn't go right, it's tempting to point at someone else, the government, the weather, the boss, the economy, your parents, your spouse. It's always easier to find a reason out there than to take a hard look in the mirror. But that's the trap. That's the very thing keeping most people stuck where they are. Blame gives temporary relief, but permanent limitation. It says, it's not my fault. And in saying that, it also says, it's not my responsibility to fix it. You hand over your power the moment you hand out blame. You give away the only thing you truly own, your ability to choose, to act, to grow. Let's be honest. Life isn't fair. It never was, and it never will be. Some people are born into comfort, others into hardship. Some get opportunities handed to them. Others have to fight for every inch. But even with all that, the deciding factor still comes down to personal choice. How you respond, how you rise, how you show up when it would be easier to sit back and complain. You don't get stronger by blaming. You get stronger by deciding, by refusing to wait on someone else to rescue you, by saying, it's not enough. I'm going to do something about it. That's where change begins, not with a new policy or a better boss, but with a person who takes ownership of their direction. I've met people who blame their company for years, never got the raise, never felt appreciated. But when you dig deeper, you find they never invested in their own development. They waited to be chosen instead of choosing themselves. And I've met people who had every reason to give up, poverty, trauma, failure, and they used that pain as fuel. Not an excuse, fuel. They started small. They stayed consistent. They built a life, not because it was handed to them, but because they stopped blaming and started building. Blame is a wall. It keeps the world out and traps you in. You might feel protected for a while, but you won't move forward. Progress comes when you tear that wall down and say, maybe it wasn't all my fault, but it is all my responsibility from here. The problem with blaming outside forces is that they're outside your control. You can't change the weather. You can't rewrite your childhood. You can't make the traffic disappear. But you can control your choices, your discipline, your words, your habits. And if you improve those things, even just a little, your whole life starts to shift. A person who stops blaming becomes magnetic. They attract opportunity, trust, respect. Why? Because people can sense when you're grounded, when you don't make excuses, when you own your results. That kind of person is rare, and that kind of person is valuable. Change is never comfortable. It always asks for effort. But the moment you accept that you are the one who must change, not the world, not your friends, not your history, that's when the tide turns. That's when you take the first real step toward freedom. It's not always easy to admit that you've been blaming. Sometimes we don't even know we're doing it. We say things like, just don't have the time, or it didn't support me, or it's just how things are right now. But listen closely. Hidden in those words is resignation. And resignation is just blame dressed in nicer clothes. You're not stuck. You're just uncommitted to the change you say you want. That's the truth, and it may sting a little, but truth always does before it heals. So today, make the shift. Catch yourself when you start pointing fingers. Redirect that energy inward. Ask, what can I do differently? What's one decision I can make today to reclaim my power? Then do it. No delay, no drama, just a step. One solid, responsible, forward-moving step. When you stop blaming, you start building. When you stop making excuses, you start making progress. The power to change doesn't live in the hands of others. It lives in you. It always has. You just have to decide to use it. So stop blaming outside forces. They're not the author of your story. You are. And the moment you write that sentence, the whole narrative begins to change. Responsibility means you act, even when others delay or deny. That's the real test. Not how you behave when everything goes right, but how you respond when others won't move, won't support, won't believe. When the team drags its feet. When your friends don't understand. When the world says wait or worse to no. That's when responsibility really shows up. It's in that moment you decide, will I pause with the crowd? Or will I move forward on my own? Too many people are waiting for approval, waiting for permission, waiting for someone to open a door, light a fire, or give them a reason. But those who understand true responsibility don't wait, they act. They get up earlier, stay up later, and do the work without applause. They don't need consensus to get started. They don't ask, is everyone on board? They ask, is this the right thing to do? And if it is, they begin, with or without backup. You see, responsibility isn't a group project. It's personal. It's the quiet voice inside that says, if this matters, then it's worth doing whether anyone joins me or not. And when you live like that, you separate yourself from the crowd. You stop being reactive and you become proactive. You're not driven by moods. You're guided by mission. I've met folks who had brilliant ideas but did nothing with them because someone close to them wasn't convinced. A spouse said, maybe not now. A friend said, it's too risky. A colleague said, we've never done it that way. They let the dream die, not because it wasn't good, but because someone else delayed or denied. That's not responsibility, that's dependence. And dependence will always rob you of momentum. Taking responsibility means saying I will do what's necessary, even if others aren't ready. Not out of pride, not to prove something, but because doing the right thing is always right, even if you're the only one doing it. Sometimes leadership looks like being the first one in the office and the last one out. Sometimes it means investing time and energy when others are still making excuses. It means setting a standard for yourself that doesn't waver based on what others do or don't do. And here's the catch. If you only act when others act, then you're not responsible. You're just reactive. You're waiting on conditions to change instead of being the change. You're following the temperature, not setting the thermostat. Responsibility says, if this project fails, I'll own my part. It says, if this relationship is going to work, I'll be the first to improve. It says, if progress is needed, I'll take the first step, even if I take it alone. Now, does that mean you never collaborate? Of course not. But it means you don't hide behind others. You don't use their hesitation as an excuse for your inaction. Because if you do, then you've traded your responsibility for comfort, and comfort doesn't grow anything. There will always be people who move slow. There will always be skeptics, but if your life is guided by their pace, you'll never reach your potential. Sometimes the road ahead is quiet. You won't always get applause for doing what's right, but you'll always get progress, and that's better than praise. People who live with responsibility tend to rise, not because everything works out perfectly, but because they show up when others hesitate. They keep going when the mood fades. They don't need a green light, they bring their own. The world moves forward because of people who say, even if it's hard, I'll take the first step. Even if no one sees, I'll do it right. Even if others delay, I will act. So if you want to grow, if you want to lead, if you want to build something that lasts, stop waiting for agreement. Stop asking for guarantees. And above all, stop holding back just because others aren't moving. Responsibility means you act, you lead, you go, you rise, even when others delay or deny. Especially then, your future doesn't improve by chance, it improves by change. It's easy to hope that tomorrow will be better. A better job, better relationships, better health, better finances. But hope by itself isn't a strategy. You can sit by the window and wish for a different life, but unless you get up and do something, nothing changes. And the hard truth is this, nothing gets better by accident. Nothing improves just because time passes. Your future only improves when you do. Now, most people wait. They wait for luck, for a break, for someone to come along and open the door for them. But what they don't realize is that waiting is the silent killer of progress. Every day you wait for things to improve on their own is a day you could have used to build something new, a habit, a skill, a mindset, a plan. The idea that time heals everything is only half true. Time plus right action. Now that's where healing and growth come from. If you're in debt and you change nothing, guess what? A year from now, you'll still be in debt, maybe worse. If you're out of shape and you don't shift your behavior, the calendar turning won't make your body stronger. What changes your future isn't time, it's a tenor decisions inside that time. Change isn't always easy. It requires effort. It means doing something different, maybe even something uncomfortable. But the reward is real, because every positive change you make, no matter how small, becomes a building block for your future. You add enough of those together, and your entire life begins to shift. I once knew a man who kept saying, someday I'll get around to it. Someday he'd start saving. Someday he'd fix his marriage. Someday he'd write the book. But someday never showed up. Because change doesn't happen on its own. It's scheduled. It's chosen. It's acted upon. And here's the real kicker. You don't need to change everything overnight. That's not how growth works. You just need to make one small change today and then repeat it tomorrow. Replace one bad habit with a good one. Read one chapter, take one walk, make one phone call. Those simple changes don't feel dramatic at first, but give them time and they compound. You look up one day and realize, I'm not who I used to be, I've grown. But it all started with that decision to stop waiting and start changing. The difference between the people who stay stuck and the ones who break through isn't intelligence, talent, or background. It's the ability to act when others only wish. Wishing doesn't change anything. Wishing says, wouldn't it be nice? Change says, let's make it happen. You can wish for wealth, or you can build a budget. You can wish for fitness, or you can change your routine. You can wish for better communication, or you can decide to listen and speak with intention. The future goes to the one who is willing to make changes before life forces them to. Change is hard in the beginning, messy in the middle, but worth it in the end. You grow confidence by doing difficult things. You gain clarity by taking action, not by sitting around thinking about it for 5 more years. And don't wait until you feel like it. That day may never come. Motivation is overrated. What matters is discipline. Discipline is doing what needs to be done even when you don't feel like doing it. Because deep down you know this. Your future is too important to leave to chance. The next version of your life isn't waiting to fall into your lap. It's waiting to be built with your own hands, one change at a time. So the choice is yours. Keep hoping things will get better, or take the steps to make them better. It's not about having everything figured out. It's about being willing to take responsibility for your future and doing something, anything, to move in the right direction. Because your future doesn't improve by chance. It improves by change. And change begins with you. You can't control the world, but you can control your decisions. That's one of the most liberating truths you'll ever embrace. The world is unpredictable. Circumstances change. People let you down. The economy shifts. Traffic happens. Storms roll in, both literal and emotional. And if your peace, your productivity, or your success depends on everything around you being perfect, you're in trouble. But here's the good news. You don't need to control the world to live a meaningful, successful life. You only need to control your thoughts, your words, your habits, your choices. And that's more than enough. Because the moment you realize that a ton of your power lies in your decisions, you stop reacting to life and start directing it. You can't choose the cards you're dealt, but you can choose how to play them. You can't decide what the stock market does today, but you can decide whether to spend recklessly or budget wisely. You can't stop every storm from coming, but you can build the kind of shelter that stands firm when it does. The people who rise in life are not the ones who try to manipulate the world. They're the ones who take ownership of their response. They decide to show up with integrity even when others are dishonest. They decide to work hard even when the reward is an instant. They decide to stay focused even when the crowd is distracted. Think about the power of that. If you had to wait for everything to go your way before you could grow, you'd be waiting a long time. But when you realize that every single day gives you the chance to make wise decisions, now you're in the driver's seat. It's not the storm that defines you, it's the decisions you make inside the storm. You can get bitter or you can get better. You can complain or you can commit. You can worry or you can work. And each one of those paths is carved by a choice. Your choice. I once met a man who told me, China, I just wish life would calm down for a while so I could get focused. But here's the truth. Life won't calm down. It's not designed to. It's full of surprises. Waiting for calm to make wise decisions is like waiting for the wind to stop before learning to sail. You learn while it's blowing. You grow in the middle of the motion. And the strongest people you'll ever meet aren't those who've had perfect lives. They're the ones who made powerful decisions during imperfect times. They chose to keep going when quitting was easier. They chose to speak up when silence was safer. They chose to learn when others were blaming. They chose to act when most people were stuck in fear. Every time you make a good decision, no matter how small, you're investing in your future. A healthy meal, a hard conversation, a few quiet minutes spent reading instead of scrolling. Those choices may seem minor in the moment, but they add up. And they begin to build momentum. And momentum is where transformation begins. The world may pull at you with urgency, with drama, with distractions, but you don't have to follow. You can pause. You can think. You can decide, this is who I want to be, and then take one step that matches that decision. You don't have to win the whole battle today. You just have to make the next right choice. That's the difference between a victim mindset and a growth mindset. A victim says, Sunke can't succeed because of what's happening around me. A growth-minded person says, I will succeed because of how I choose to respond to what's happening around me. You can't always control what people say about you, but you can control your character. You can't always control what opportunities come your way, but you can control your preparation. When preparation meets opportunity, great things happen. So, stop worrying about controlling the world. You'll exhaust yourself trying. Instead, focus all your energy on what you can control, your decisions. Because in the end, it's your daily decisions that shape your destiny. You can't control the world, but you can control you. And that's where the power is.